I'm 12 or 13 years older than you. But one of the things that I contemplate...
Maybe not after this hearing.
No, I'm sure I'm older. Actually, you're doing quite well. Have you ever contemplated the idea of what your freedom was like 30 years ago and what it is today?
How old was I 30 years ago?
You were 20.
I'm not sure I have ever contemplated that exact.
Well, I want to tell you, a lot of Americans have, and I certainly have. And there's a marked change in this country from when I was 20 to now that I'm 62. And one of the problems with confidence, and the reason I asked you the question, is a lot of Americans are losing confidence because they're losing freedom. They're losing liberty. You'll recall I asked you about the vegetables questions yesterday. That's on the front of a lot of people's mind. Not vegetables, health care. You knew where I was going. The very fact that the government is going to have the ability to take away, mandate what I must buy or must not buy, a very large loss of freedom.
And then I was thinking about, were we really more free if you were a woman in 1980? Do you know, Solicitor General, how many women were on the U.S. Supreme Court in 1980?
Well, I guess 0.
That would be correct. There were no women on the Supreme Court. Do you know how many women were sitting up here 30 years ago in 1980?
No, it was very striking when Senator Feinstein said that she was one of 2 women, and I thought, how amazing. So how many?
There were no women on the Judiciary Committee. In fact, no women were on the Judiciary Committee until after the Anita Hill hearings in 1991. Do you know how many women were in the United States Senate in 1980, 30 years ago?
I'm stumped again.
No women were in the United States Senate. There had been women in the Senate before, and then in 1981, Senator Castlebaum joined the Senate. So as I think about that question about if people were more free in 1980, I think it's all in the eyes of the beholder. Certainly people had the potential freedom to get these jobs, but there were things that were impeding them from advancing to where I think that they wanted to go. And you actually gave a speech in 2005 on women in the legal profession, status report. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, it's clear that we have come a long way. And as you noted, when Harvard's president, in this speech, you noted that Harvard's president was asked about the law school and how it was faring during World War II, when so many of the people who would have been in the law school were off to war. And his response was that it wasn't as bad as he expected. He said, we have 75 students and we haven't had to admit any women. But your speech also made some very serious points about the way there are still gender disparities in the legal professions. We all know that more and more women are graduating from law school and from our professional schools, but women lawyers, to quote you, women lawyers are not assuming leadership roles in proportion to their numbers. And as you note, that is, quote, troubling not only for the women whose aspirations are being frustrated, but also for the society that is losing their talents. As dean, you clearly recognize the problems and disparities faced by women entering the legal profession. What did you do about it, and what else do you think we should be doing about it?
Well, there still are these disparities, and it's interesting because right now, you know, Harvard and all schools are about 50% women. You know, sometimes it's 48 and sometimes it's 52. Some schools are actually a good deal more, 55.
Well, and we know there's over 50% of the people in this country are women, but there's only 17 out of 107 senators that are women. But go on.
Yes, and I do think that if you look all over the legal profession, not just in these governmental institutions, but you know, certainly in law firms, women don't have the kind of there's just not the kind of diversity that I think anybody would want, and I think people are trying hard to make that diversity happen. I don't think it's a matter of bad faith in this regard, but I do think that there are structural obstacles, that there are ways in which it's hard to balance work and family, still harder for a woman than it is for a man, and that often comes into play in the legal profession as it does elsewhere. And if you look at these opportunities for women, I think probably the best thing that we could do as a society, but this isn't the court's role, this really is Congress's role, is to try to enable women and men, but I think that they especially strike women, to manage those balances, the desire to have a fulfilling professional life and also the desire to have a wonderful family life, to manage that balance better and to sort of create the structures that enable them to do so. And, the work that I did in the Clinton White House, you're quite right, it has nothing to do with what I would do as a judge, and it also didn't have much to do with my particular beliefs, except that I did believe in I was proud to serve in the administration of President Clinton, and one of the things that I did do there was to work on some of these issues, to work on issues relating to child care, for example, and to try to help women and men with these very difficult issues in how to have wonderful professional lives and also have wonderful family lives.
So do you think women are more free, just to end this discussion that was sparked by Senator Coburn's going back to 1980, do you think women are more free to pursue some of their career goals now than they were in 1980, given the numbers that we see?
I think that there's no question that women have greater opportunities now, although they could be made greater still.
Thank you.